Oh, what a lot of stuff. Hello, and welcome to the Board Game Basement with me, AZ, Ghosty, and of course, Ghosty's mate, who is Alice, once again. And we're really pleased to bring you another review of ours, and we're doing a review of Chronicles of Drunagor. Drunegor, who knows, tomato. But it's by Creative Game Studios, who's brought us this wonderful dungeon crawler to our table. And as you can see, it's definitely to our table, to the edge of our table, and to the other. Straight away, you can see quite a lot of stuff that this game takes up. But we've been very excited playing this game straight from the off.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it, haven't we?
It is a dungeon crawler game, primarily. You're a group of adventurers taking on the evils of darkness that's encroaching this land. Straight away, I mean, if some of you, this is the rule book that you get. Looking at this straight away, if you've played Dungeons & Dragons, this looks very 3.5y. And that's the first thing I thought when I opened the box. Unlike 3.5 though, this is actually a good game, so have no fear about that at all. If you like, I know we say this all the time, or many people will say this, how does this compare to Dungeons & Dragons? And everyone goes, well, you can't really compare to Dungeons & Dragons. No, you can't, but this definitely has taken inspiration from that. You can quite clearly see a lot of the terminology that we'd use at Dungeons & Dragons has been transferred across to this game. So it's very easy to read and very easy to pick up when you're reading this rulebook. You know what things mean straight away, and that you'd think that would be a simple thing in board games when they're designing board games, but for some bizarre reason it isn't. For some reason, games designers like to put their own twist on things, and they'll call something such as initiative, they'll call it something else for some bizarre reason. And half the time you sat there thinking, oh yeah, I forgot that means this. When really it didn't need to be called anything else other than what it is, because that's just sort of what we're used to. So it follows a mechanical language, I would say, of D&D. It does, in terms of your attacks, how things are presented. It is very D&D like as a dungeon crawler, which is nice. The game itself is based around a set of adventurers. You can play this solo, in which case you'd play two adventurers, and you can play it up to 5, and you can have a team of 5. We've been playing a team of 4, so we've had 2 adventurers each, haven't we, going through this. Yeah. You're presented with a scenario which has a nice flavour text to it. It's not overly in depth, but it gives you enough to get a grip with an overarching story, and it sets you up with a map. And as you can see straight away, we have a 3D map, everybody. I mean, how awesome is it? I never thought I would be excited about raising my map 5 centimetres from the ground, but oh my goodness, I'm excited.
It makes a difference, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Game.
Adding a dimension to the game absolutely does. And it's fun. Yeah. It really is. Knocking your opponent off a tiny bridge onto the floor is, you don't realise how much of an experience joy that is until you do it. But it actually is, and it actually works. And I think they've thought about a good idea that perhaps practically is quite difficult. How much table space have people reasonably got to play this on? Can we achieve something that can give us this 3D map design and really make this stand out? But it works. It actually does work. The maps themselves, I would say, aren't huge. They're not, if you've played Descent and things like that. They're very grid-like in that sort of sense. So the maps aren't massive, but they utilise that well in terms of your characters don't move very far, and the enemies, they get to you quite quickly. So there's never really a period of time where you're sort of just moving forward very slowly. And you get to open doors. You're discovering the map. This is the map as it ended, sort of as we're coming to the finish of our game that we're doing here. But you start off on just one little bit. You move forward, and then you open these cool little doors, and you open them, and they have the next bit that you find, a little bit of flavour text, what's going on in there, and you work through these based on the scenario. It's absolutely brilliant. Almost like the Discovery, if you've played Swords and Sorcery, they have their little Discovery book. You'd open that and that tells you what you find without spoiling it. And they've done all that just in these little doors, and they give you a little door, and I think that's really cool. I actually think that's really good.
Because the doors slot in, so here we've got the bridge and it slots into
They slot
that.
into those so you can keep the doors in as you go along. They've designed a system where you are able to replay a scenario, and if you want to make it different, you can, and you can scan these QR codes which are on the doors, and that will present you with a different map. I think they're allowing people to design their own stuff and upload them for the purposes of these things. I haven't used this yet because for the first game it just recommends you go through the whole thing and use the standard one, so that's all we've been doing. So I don't know how efficient the app or website where it takes you is, but I can presume it is fairly simple in terms of what the doors present you with, but it is enough to get you excited about what you're going to see and what you're going to find. The game itself works on a system where you've got a set number of cubes. So each character starts off with 5 cubes, and these cubes are different colours, and the different colours represent different things that you can do. So for instance, your yellow cubes are based on up close actions, so melee actions and things like that. Your red cubes are based on range actions that you can do. Your green cubes are based on movement based things, and your blue cubes are based on sort of magical aurora kind of based things. And they've utilised the system really well. I was always a fan of rolling dice, as I've said many times before. If you watch our videos, I'm a massive dice roller. I do enjoy that. And if you've played things like Descent, you get a card and that gives you your attack, and you do that attack, and you say, as an action, you'll say, yeah, I'm going to do that attack, which at the time I thought was fine. I thought it was great. Then when I played Gloomhaven, and there's no dice in that, there's nothing like that, I really thought I wouldn't like it, but that game for me changed the way I view these sort of crawl games, because I'm not Gloomhaven loving here because it's got its own, I have my own problems with that sort of game, but what it did do is show me how much you can make your actions really feel real. And what I mean by that is you've got your cards that you're going to do, and you've got all your attacks, and they'll say, you know, you're going to jump over and slash, and you'll do that. With games like that, when you're playing a card to lose it and then it's gone until you claim it back, you actually feel like you're doing that action as your character. You are jumping over and you're slashing. You're not just rolling a dice or saying, I'm going to do this attack, which is like a lightning bolt, and then it just becomes a number eventually. It loses its oomph. With this game in the cube system, once you place a cube on one of your abilities that you're going to do, you can't use that again. It's filled up. That slot's been taken up by what you've done. So you have to use the different abilities of your different characters wisely. You have to think about what you're doing. You have to plan tactically about how you're going to do that. And the cube system, for me, works really well because they've been quite clever about it. Each of your characters is able to help other characters do things, whether it's through a reaction or whether it's just through an ability that helps another character. But because you've got a cube-based system whereby, as I said before, you've got colours which represent close quarters, ranged or magic, depending on which cubes you've saved, it distinguishes how you use that ability. So for instance, if I was stood next to one of Alice's characters and I had my shield and I could defend her, I could use a yellow cube because I'm next to her. So that says I'm next to you. I can spend a yellow cube because that means I'm close to you. If I had an ability that was to heal somebody, because one of my characters is a paladin, and they were across the other side of the map, if I spent a blue cube, which is like a magical aura, I could reach her with this magical aura and be able to heal her. Whereas if I only had a yellow cube left, she's not next to me, I can't do that. So you really do have to make use of your resources, which is great because it adds that level of tactics. And I think a lot of people will like that, the way they don't just want a simple go along and bash people's heads in, which is fine because we all like bashing people's heads in. We all want to do that. but it adds that level of, we need to think about this, we need to know what we're doing. When you run out of cubes, you take an action that is a forced action where you reclaim back all of your cubes, but you also take a penalty, which is a curse, and you take a black cube and you fill out one of your slots, and you can't use that ability now. That's gone.
No.
Forever. I say forever, until someone can cleanse it as an ability, which is like a heal sort of thing. I can get rid of a curse for you, and each character has their own way of doing that themselves, but other characters can also pitch in and help. You're only allowed a maximum of 5 of these black cubes. If you ever were to gain a 6, that's it. That person has succumbed to the darkness and they are out of the game. And once one person's out of the game, everybody loses. So it's you need to take care of everybody in this game. It's not a one-man show. We'll keep going till the end. You really have to have that level of teamwork. You can also be injured, and you can also be knocked out of the game. You're only allowed to have that happen twice. So the first time it happens, you sort of get knocked out, and then you refresh yourself and get back up. But if you ever happen again where you went back down to 0 for whatever reason, you took another one, that's it. Yes, you're done.
It was close for us at some points, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the game has scaled well so far. We've done quite a bit. We've been enjoying ourselves. Like I said, we wanted to do a review straight away, but we really wanted to get into it. We've been enjoying it, so we just kept playing, which I'm glad we did, because it has shown me that the game has scaled well with the upgrade system, with the difficulty. You feel like you're better, but you also feel like you're under pressure as well. Which is really important, and it's a hard thing to get right. You either find you're really OP and you're so overpowered that you're breezing through everything, or you're on the back foot and it really feels like a struggle, and you lose umpteen amount of times and you get frustrated. This has been close, but they've done it in a way where it is manageable, which I really like. I like the fact that it is manageable, but it's to the crunch, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
we have been several times where we've been healing each other like
it was my rolling
frantically.
Yeah. I'm cursed.
There is an element of rolling in the game, which, hallelujah, I love. I don't know how I would have been if I didn't have this. And that's just a hit that you when you're doing attack, you have to hit, unless it's a magical ability or something that just does direct damage. You'll roll to see if you hit, and then you'll do the damage. So there is a chance that you won't hit and you'll miss. But there's abilities and cards and things that you can get which raise your roll and things like that. So it's not a dire situation, but it happened to us a few times, hasn't it, where we've just rolled so poorly. No one can hit this creature.
It was me and Talk, just Talk last night, wasn't it, when I was playing with him, and I was like,
he's the barbarian, by the way,
yeah.
Talk. He's a barbarian orc, yeah. Talk to the orc. Or don't, because he'll probably bash your head in.
But yeah, it was...
So there is that element in there, which I think, I hope a lot of people will enjoy. I like it. I like the fact there is that little roll element in there, because it adds that extra bit, are we going to get this? And I think it's only fair. You're in battle, aren't you? You're not, the enemy isn't going to just let you hit them. Saying that, enemies, this is also quite a complex issue, and I think in dungeon crawls especially, how do you operate an AI system with an enemy? You've got a few choices. You either operate an AI system that is quite intricate, that changes the way it does things. Swords and Sorcery is a good example of that, where you would roll and they would have a list of things that they could possibly do, so you're never quite sure what that enemy's going to do. It's quite hard to prep for what they may or may not do. But it's a vast system where you're constantly looking at those cards, going, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? But the difficulty is there with that. It adds the cleverness to the AI, that sort of system. They don't do that in this at all. They give you a card with the monster's stats on and what that monster does, and it only does that. The monsters go up in difficulty depending on whether they're a rookie or a fighter or a veteran. All that means is they just get harder, but they're the same monster and they do the same thing. So you're able to plan in this game. There is that element of, we know what that monster is going to do, so what can we do to avoid it? And sometimes that is moving out of its way. We need to get as far back as we can, because it's going to move towards us and it won't be able to do anything. on paper, when you say about an AI system like that, you think, oh, that's pretty boring. No, that's not really good.
It wasn't.
For this, it works.
Yeah.
For this, it works because it's quick. You're having your goes, you're attacking, they're moving and attacking. It's quick, and it works for this game. And it's not. It doesn't get boring, does it?
No, not at all.
It doesn't get boring. It's quite because the monsters do different things, as in the different types of monsters will do the different things. You are having to look up the abilities of those monsters in sort of the rule book quite a bit, and at first there is a lot of admin in terms of what does that mean, what does that mean, what does that mean. We're just starting to get to grips with that now, aren't we? We're finding we're doing that less and less now.
You are.
With what those monsters do, so which is obviously part of learning the game, but it's not. I don't think it needed to be any more complicated than what it is. I'm happy with how it is. Even when you're fighting the bosses and things like that, they use a similar system, just on a bit more of a broader scale. So they have a few more cards with abilities on, and you work your way through it. The monsters, they don't. It doesn't work on it. It works on a turn-based system in terms of you've got an initiative track, depending on which role you've selected for each of your characters. So, for instance, Torque is our defender. My mage elf over there is support. My paladin is the leader, and your assassin over there is the what they call the slayer or something to that degree, anyway. And that determines where you are on this initiative track. And that doesn't change from one side to the next. You will stay in the same position. The enemies tell you where they go on that track, and you just go along the track, and then all those enemies of that type will activate when it gets to them, so on and so forth. Nice and simple. Doesn't require a lot of forethought. There are systems where, you know, the initiative track changes and moves. Sometimes I think that just adds a level of admin that doesn't really need to be there. For this game, I'm happy because it's role-based. You know why it's useful for your character to be at that point in the initiative track. So it makes sense. And I think that's really good. And you know who goes next, and you know whereabouts you should be. You never really get lost with whereabouts you are and who's moved where. Nice and straightforward. So for me, the AI system in this game is as good as it needed to be. I think it is. I do think it is. I think any more complicated would have bogged it down. And you want to get through it. You want to have a nice time playing that dungeon and then going on to the next bit, finding your gear and, you know, reading about the next bit.
You don't want to be waiting for your go either, do you?
No, you don't. There isn't that element, is there, really?
No.
Because you can do things on other people's go as well to help. There's always that. Everybody's involved, which is nice, which I really like. One thing that I never thought I needed until I saw it was this thing here, and you can see it, I'll raise it up, is this. I never thought I needed one of these until I saw it, and this is an enemy health tracker. My goodness.
So good.
My goodness, it's like sliced bread. So each of the enemies that you put out get a disc on them. As you can see, these guys have got a little red disc, and that will represent on here. So I know that, you know, this crab creature thing has 24 health, and when we hit her, she moves down until, you know, she's dead, and then she's removed from the board. Goodness me, why don't we have more of these? Because putting heart tokens down their enemies is, I mean, why have we done this for so long? Why have we done this for so long? Like,
we said that we were like, we're going to make one of these for
pain.
next game.
You know, we've been playing Madeira as well, and we were saying if that had this, would it be so much better?
Yeah.
Because
they're adding what you've done so far, and then you're like, right, now we've only got 3
it can be
left
quite
to kill
confusing
and-
when there's quite a lot of enemies on the board. But this just stops that. You know exactly where you are with everybody.
And it's satisfying counting down the damage that you've done.
Exactly. I mean, in cubes, everybody loves cubes, so we get to move more cubes. Who doesn't want to do that? So the health system, I was really pleased about because it
seems so simple, doesn't it? But it's like it makes a world of difference.
It does make a world of difference. It really does. The game's not just about going along and, you know, bashing a few heads in and trying to get to the end objective. You're also discovering things to do with the story. It's got a wonderful art section in it. which is sort of the discovery book. So when you come to places of interest, you'll find all sorts of things. This is a dead guy that we've robbed his chest for some reason, didn't we? You know, all this, it's quite gloomy, but you might be able to see that, find things on there. And you can select what it is you want to do out of these, and you'll go to the page in the book, and that'll tell you what you find and what you see. Really nice touch.
Hard to decide sometimes, isn't it? There's some good ones.
It is, and it's a nice touch to the game because it adds just a little bit of exploration to it, which is always needed. It's not just finding a token and drawing, you know, a card and finding what you get. It's actually added a bit of flavour to what it is you're doing, and I think in this day and age, you know, there's no excuse to be just drawing cards for the sake of drawing cards when you can make something lovely like this. And get that flavour of the art of the game. The art's lovely in the game, like I said, very 3.5 style. You said it looked like World of Warcraft, didn't you? When you saw it, when you saw that. And I do get that. It does have that kind of little bit less cartoony than that, but it does have that feel of that kind of design. But it doesn't, whether you like that or not, I don't think it would be a massive problem at all because, you know, it's not in your face by any stretch of the imagination. Models are really nicely done, really well presented, crafted, weighty as well. They're solid models. I give credit now for anyone that makes solid models. If I had to have another hollow model, I might cry. It drives me up the wall.
Good. I love the actual monsters as well. Like, I think they look so cool.
Yeah,
really creative
you could
with
paint
that.
these you could paint these up really nicely. And if someone is interested in painting things, especially the heroes are really well crafted and look smart. I would definitely recommend that. This game was obviously a Kickstarter game, so it's not in retail. It's a big game. It is expensive. It really is expensive. You're talking, I think it's going for about £500 on eBay for a copy of this game. That's if you want the all-in pledge, which we had. It comes with these trays, and they're part of the pledge as well. I wouldn't play without the trays. They made a large version of the player boards, which is great because it has a little bit extra stuff on. As you go along, you can imagine you upgrade your character, and depending on your class, which is dictated by the person you are, they have a set class, you can get upgrades to that class. Well, on the big boards, it has all of those already on there, so you can just put your cube on the one that you selected. But there's no board thing big enough for that, which I found a bit strange because
I think
I wouldn't have the cubes. But there's that many cubes. I say that many, but there's a few cubes on your board. If you knocked it by accident, they would go everywhere.
They've got the little grooves here, haven't they?
You'd be really frustrated because you wouldn't know what actions you'd use. Whereas these trays have slots to put the cubes in, they're never going to get knocked or out of the way. So I think the boards are a bit of a must, to be honest, to hold everything together.
Can I just say, the only thing that I said was, it'd be great if instead of these being black, they were like a grey, so that all the tokens showed up on it, the cubes. Just because, you know, when you're in a zone and you're having a look, and then you've got the cursed ones, which are black cubes, sometimes I'll be like, oh, do this move. I'm like, oh no, it's a cube there.
Yeah, so
that was the only thing.
The black tray blends in with the black cubes a little bit. So that was there is that, and it does do that. That it can be hard to see.
But I love having this, and I love being organised with things like this as well. I love that.
So the one thing, so gameplay wise and production wise, I think they've done a really nice job. I really like the game. I think they've put thought into the fact, and I think not enough credit gets given to designers that sort of say, how far do we need to go? Do we need to go any further to achieve what we want to achieve? No, I don't think we do. So I always give a massive thumbs up to saying, I think you got to a point where you realised what we want to achieve by this game we're doing. Let's not overcomplicate things. Let's not add something that doesn't need to be added. And I firmly think that they did that, and they've done that well. So I'm really pleased. An aspect of the game that I probably have the biggest gripe with, and it's difficult because this game is based around a darkness, a curse that's sort of encroaching all of this land. And part of the game is you add, at the end of the turn, you'll draw a token, a rune token. And on the back of the rune tokens, do you want to scroll one of those little runes and give them a show? On the back of the rune tokens, you've got a shape, which is like that. Well, we've got these curse plates, grids, which match the shapes on those. And you're supposed to put these on the board, starting from a section of the map that has sort of the symbol of this curse thing, and you try and it will stretch towards your strongest character in an attempt to get them, to curse them in a sense. And they'll take damage if they step onto it, they'll take damage if they're in the movement on it. They'll also give bonuses to the enemies and penalties to you if you're near it. That's an intricate part of this game, but it's incredibly fiddly.
Yeah.
And it stops the game. You draw a token out and then you trying to put this thing down and you're picking up all the figures and placing this thing underneath it. I didn't like it.
That's one of the only things you didn't like.
No, yeah, it was. Yeah. And it's not annoying, it's sad because I could see that that's obviously an important part of this game, this like encroaching darkness thing, but it really is fiddly on a small board, placing tiles underneath things and moving it around and trying to get it, deciding who it goes to, how it works, is a little bit fiddly. And it sort of stops that flow that you've got going, and now I need to place these things down. Who was underneath this one? Oh, it was him, and placing everything back on. I'm not a fan of taking everything off and putting something underneath to put everything back on. I always say there's got to be a better way of doing that. And we've slightly changed our game just to make it because the way we enjoyed it. So how we did it was when we draw a rune token out, whoever is in that rune token section, because the rune tokens are different colours and they appear on the initiative track in different sections, whichever one of our characters is in that section takes damage as if they've been cursed or the curse is getting bad, so they take damage for that. And we've been playing it like that. Some monsters do place those tokens down as part of their abilities, and we've still been doing that if they do that. But we just changed that up for our thing just because we got a bit tired of having to take things off and on.
Trying to get them slotted together.
Yeah, it really did. It was a tough one because I don't like changing the rules of a game, especially if it's meant to be that way, which is why for us, we're actually making it probably harder for ourselves because we're always taking damage when one of those is drawn out, whereas normally that might not happen. Everyone might be fine. So I think we're playing it in a fair way, but again, obviously you're meant to be putting these things down and trying to create this sort of darkness that's moving around. But it depends how everyone feels about it. It'd be interesting to know what other people think if they have had a chance to play it.
Yeah.
And how they thought that was and how you feel about, having to slot things under a map full of stuff, which is quite difficult. I'd have liked to have seen another level of tier.
Oh, that would have been good, yeah.
I think your maximum tier is this one here. It sort of goes up to level 3, quite small. I'd have liked to have seen another level, I think. And especially a level perhaps that could go over something else, like a hanging level, that could make it higher. There are games that raise things a lot higher than this. Hate does it. If you've got Hate and they have the pedestals, you go really high with those pedestals. They come up here sometimes and you build those up. So it can be done. That's not a massive issue. It doesn't spoil anything.
No, it just would have been cool.
But it would have looked a lot cooler if you could have just built them up a bit more. But those really are my only gripes to the game that I would have. Everything else I really like about it. I really
enjoyed it.
I don't think it's overcomplicated. I think it's fun to play. It's easy to manage. There isn't a lot of admin to the game, although you can see all of this stuff. There actually isn't a lot of admin to it at all. There's just a lot of stuff, which you can expect, I suppose, from big sort of Kickstarter games. You do get a lot of stuff, but
it's not complicated though, even with all the components, is it? It doesn't make it complicated.
It isn't complicated at all, which is nice. Because you could just sit down and play it, which is exactly why it's taken us this long to get to this point. Because we have gone, should we make the video yet? I don't know. Let's just have a game, and we've just sort of been going along and enjoying ourselves. something that I was talking about with somebody on our Instagram, they were asking me why we haven't done a review of Sleeping Gods. And I said, because I've not played it yet. And I've got it, but they, for some reason, they didn't send me the expansion. They missed it out by accident. So I had to wait for them to resend me the Tides expansion, because it isn't an expansion. They made a game and they cut off the top of it and said, this is an expansion. It's not an expansion. The Dungeons bit is an expansion because you can add stuff into it, but the Tides one is not at all. This game has a lot of expansions to it, and they work them very clever, because you can play this. If you had the base game, you can go along and you can play the campaign. You can go through the campaign and it wouldn't make a difference. You could have a blast. But if you have the expansions, it tells you in the campaign book, if you have this expansion, you can go and do that now and then come back to this point. Marvellous. How marvellous is that? Because how many times do we get expansions and we really don't know where they fit in? Do they fit in afterwards, at the end? Are they in the middle? The fact that they're weaved into this is good. Is really good, because you're not saying you're missing out in part of the game. You're just saying there's more to it. Like they've done them like side quests, yeah. And they've thought about how they can make it so if I've got the expansion and somebody hasn't, when I come to the end of that expansion and go back to the point where they're at, am I better off because I've done an extra bit? But no, you're not. You might have more gear and more stuff like health potions and things at the end of it, but you've just unlocked a little bit more of the story. And when you come back to that same point, you're at the same level as somebody else who's not done that, which is great, because it means you can go into the next bit and still have that same experience in terms of the toughness and the and what you achieve out of it, which I think is great.
As I said, at the end of this one, I don't think we got to camp, did we, and wipe out anything else? Is that what you're on about?
Well, we're still in the middle of this one.
Oh, okay.
This is part of an expansion one that we're doing. We're trying to get onto a ship, a cursed ship. We've managed to get onto the cursed ship, and then now we're going to go and I think find out what's causing all of this.
Oh, I didn't know if
what's
we'd done
causing
it. Okay.
all of this palaver on the ship. But again, we're not achieving things like upgrading our levels on our characters to gain more levels in our class or in our support abilities and things like that. All we're doing is we might gain the odd stuff and be able to make more sense of what people are talking about in the story, which is great. Which is great. And I can't think off the top of my head anything that's done that has an expansion that also is weaved into the main quest of the game. So if you do have it, you can go. It tells you can go and do it. I really can't think of anything. So when it said it, I was genuinely like, sure. I was like, oh my goodness, it's telling me I can do it. Of course I'm going to do it. Which is nice, because it stops you from getting confused and being overwhelmed. Because there's a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff to the game. Arguably, you may want to get expansions because you have different classes in the expansions that come with them. So if you do want an array of choice in terms of what you want to be, because there's everything from, you think of what there is in Dungeons and Dragons, there is here monks, sorcerers, everything, which is great, because you can be wherever you want to be. Druids, bards, whatever, and you can have that different experience. So it's nice that they've thought about that and really wanted to add that choice into the whole game. And we've been really enjoying it, haven't we? We really have.
Yeah.
So pros to the game, I would definitely say the I don't want to say simplicity of the game, but the simplicity of play, but managed with the enjoyment of the game. Definitely a bonus. Artwork, figures, quality, really lovely. How everything's laid out, really nice. Those health trackers, double point to those health trackers for the enemy. Rulebook's nice, and it's lengthy, but it's not hard to read, and it's very understandable. doesn't get confusing at all. And really, my only negative would be the darkness placing those tiles. That would be my only gripe. But it's easily resolved, and if you want to do it, then great. And if you wanted to find a different way around it, we did pretty easily, and it hasn't spoiled our game at all. If anything, we've been getting maimed. So, there is that. But yeah, I mean, how have you found? We've been playing Madeira, haven't we? Which isn't a dungeon crawler, but is in a way.
It's more of a story game, isn't it? Completely. There's a lot more story to that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that, weren't we? How they compare to one another, and they don't. It's one of those things where they don't really. You wouldn't choose one over the other, would you?
No, you wouldn't, because they're different.
Because they're different. They are different. If I had a choice between this, Descent, or Swords and Sorcery and things like that, I think I would choose this. I actually would. Because I like the pace of this. I think it has the pace, the story, just enough of each of these things to keep it going. You could do quite a lot in a gaming session if you wanted to. If you played with people that knew what they were doing, you could just go through it and have a great time and keep going. It doesn't take a lot at all to set up and rock, does it? We haven't tried to save our characters to pack away and unpack and then go again. We've left everything on the table, just cleared up the dungeon section and then just started again. But we can start in 5 minutes, can't we, doing that?
Yeah.
It really is simple like that.
The only thing is, the number and lettering system on the cards.
Yeah.
I found that a little bit confusing. I don't know if that was just me, but I'd liked it to be more ordered. That's it. There's something really tiny.
I'm not sure why they have like everything on the map tiles. They have like APL F1 or something like that. You'll look for that map tile. They do have slightly bizarre order of things, which I'm not entirely sure.
Because because I like to organise it, don't I? And I give you the tiles. But no, and that's what. Maybe it's just my brain. I'm like, I need to know what's coming next.
There isn't that many. All the tiles are double-sided, and they're paper tiles. They're not like hard cardboard tiles, so they don't take up a lot of room.
I bet they do actually mean something though. So if it does mean something, please do tell me.
Yeah, I know the thing he means. It's from the expansion. It's telling you what expansion it's from, and that's the tile for it.
Oh, okay.
Whereas the normal ones would just say like that, ETB. Would just be the normal one.
Okay.
So when it's got something like a prefix at the start, it means it's an expansion.
What does APL mean? Do you know?
Well, it's whatever it is we're doing, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's the name of this expansion or something. I ain't got a clue.
I would just be intrigued to know, that was all.
But yeah, could you, big question, as we always ask here at the basement, could you play this with somebody that hasn't played board games before?
I've not played that many. Well, I played it.
I force you to play them. Otherwise we wouldn't do anything. Yeah, because we wouldn't do anything. So
we'd watch
X-Files
and Buffy.
I think you could. You could, if you had a group of people and one of them, was new to board gaming. I think you could. Probably not bring a single person down here that you just met in the office and say, "Welcome to my world." Maybe not.
A bit much for them.
Yeah, maybe not. Because it does look overwhelming. To stare at all of this, it's overwhelming. It's not, but it's difficult to explain to somebody who has no idea what they're looking at, does it? It could be a bit daunting. But they could easily play it.
Yeah.
Being told what to do, you could easily do it.
It wouldn't take them that long to pick it up, would it?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. There's no, apart from the Q code system that they have just to give you different maps and things, there's no apps or anything like that. And we were talking about this as well. This could have an app easily. Yeah. They could have added an app to this that got rid of all the admin that you would need to do, track the health of the monsters, do the initiative. So you could get rid of a lot of stuff on your table by having an app. I don't mind apps. I think it's the 21st century and we should be looking towards making things accessible. Especially we want bigger board games, because we do. And I say bigger board games, all I mean is board games that give us more time for our money. The downside of that is they require a lot of stuff. So if we can do things to take away table space,
condense it.
Yeah, if we can condense things down, especially things that we don't need to do, then great. At the minute, I do think there needs to be the option for people, unless the game is directly saying we're an app-based game, etc. I always think it's nice when they give people the option to use an app or not.
Yeah.
I think that's good. If I had a choice to use an app for this game, I would get rid of the initiative tracker. Although I love this, you could do this on an app. All your cards could be drawn via the app. You know, it'd bring it up and then it'd tell you what your character has. Just the admin. If it could do all the admin, you'd still have your boards with your cubes and do all that yourself. I would probably really like an app, but it's not necessary. It isn't. It'd be nice if they did one so they could bring up a big picture, like if you had a TV, the whole picture of this could come up, and it could have music and things like that. Because I love stuff like that when you add atmosphere to it, and it's hard to do that with games like this because they change what it is you're doing without having just raging battle music going on in the background, which gets tiresome after a bit.
Or me piping up with Erasmus.
Yeah, please don't do that. Please don't do that. So I think there's scope for this game to expand. There's scope for this to be implemented in other settings. There's scope to improve it. But as it stands, awesome. I really like it.
Yeah.
I really do, and I think for the price, it's expensive. But I've not grumbled about paying what I paid because I've enjoyed it. And
it's been worth it.
Like I've said to Alice, every time I come down and see it, I always think, oh, let's have a go. I want to keep going, which is nice because it is easy to get sucked into a different. I've got a lot of games to get through, and it's easy to think, oh, we need to start this now. But no, I've been really enjoying it. I have, so I'm happy that it's given me a different perspective and a different way of looking at a dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
All down to these doors. Who knew what doors can do?
And do you know what? Because I kept on saying, I'm sure they slot into that thing. And when we figured it out, we're like, this is so cool.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's
something
so cool.
so you can slot something in, you're like, oh my goodness, there's a bridge. What more could we possibly need in this entire game?
Yeah, good.
So we're going to keep playing it. We're going to keep playing Madeira as well and enjoying ourselves. I hope everybody else out there is trying to make the most of being able to play games with folks as well. Yeah. It'd be nice when we can start doing some stuff with groups and we can get some games going that do require more players. That's going to be really nice. Probably do some live sessions as well. We're going to be doing some giveaways of some decent games. So stay tuned for that because I'm sure you'll all be very excited. Thanks again for all the support you've been giving, all the questions that we've been getting about everything. We've been enjoying going through those, haven't we?
Yeah.
And meeting a lot of nice people. That's the main thing, isn't it? Meeting good people who enjoy the same thing.
Everyone's so friendly. Like, I don't think we've had any negativity.
Well, I hope not.
It's very easy to get online, isn't it? So I think that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really
but
good.
Yeah, we've been enjoying the support, and we're glad it's growing, and we're glad that people are getting a lot out of it, and especially enjoying what we're saying and what we've got to present. And we've been really enjoying doing it, haven't we? And having a blast. We just only wish there was more hours in the day so we could get through stuff a bit more. Mm-hmm. So from here at the basement, and from me, it's 2 thumbs up for this game. Good old Chronicles, and a Ghosty White. Ghosty's been very much enjoying his time here, bashing a few monster schools. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't? So stay tuned. We're probably going to have a few more videos coming your way, and ours, soon enough. And we look forward to bringing it to you. So from the basement, see you next time. Why did I jazz hands?
You did jazz hands. Yeah.